Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Digital Grocer, Mercatus's podcast. I'm your host, Sylvain, President and CEO of Mercatus Technologies. And as always, joining me from the safety of his Batcave is Mercatus's Vice President of Marketing, Mark Fairest.
It's very good to be back.
It's great, and I can't believe this is episode 2 of season 4. It's exciting.
It is. We're still working out the kinks.
We are.
We're getting there.
Yeah, and it's funny enough, we are recording on, which we've never done before. We're actually recording on a Sunday.
Yeah, it's more like you said. It's opportunity to do this in a little more relaxed environment.
Yeah, you're not having to rush off of a call, rush off of a meeting, and then worry about getting everything done. Post. Show editing, and then you're rushing off to another meeting. It makes it that much more difficult, that much more riskier for a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quite frankly, of course,
right? We never make mistakes, though.
Well, you tell me about it, right? So there's a lot happening in the industry today. So since our last episode, episode 1 of season 4, Amazon opened up their grocery store.
Yeah, big news. A lot of media coverage in the trades.
Yeah, and I know we ended up getting a story on Winsight Grocery, which was, we talked about what can Amazon do that some of the other traditional retailers can't do. And I kind of mentioned and said, the reality is Amazon will be able to integrate technology into the experience, and which is easy. It's easier for them to do because, they're not dealing with years of legacy. And I've always said grocery retailers will be strong depending on where the executive group and the CEO grew up. So if they grew up, towards operational ranks, they'll be really good at that. If they grew up through the marketing ranks, again, they'll be really good at that, their brand and so on. But the reality, that doesn't exist in Amazon. So there's things like that they're doing at the store in Woodland Hills. They've integrated the Amazon Echo devices to help you find products in the store. And, you and I both know planogram compliance at a grocery retailer will vary from, I've seen as low as 30%. And I've seen some cases, some retailers are really, really good at it. They'll get north of 85%.
Yeah. I mean, they've had the benefit of being able to do this from the ground up.
Right.
It's in applying, in some circles, it's a dirty word term, Silicon Valley mindset, but they are coming at it from a technology perspective.
Yes,
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we also saw the cart that they actually deployed.
Yep.
And that's to facilitate checkout. And the reality, if you look at the way that cart was designed, they've taken that whole camera system that would have been kind of part of the ceiling, and they've shrunk it down into the cart. So when you're actually putting an item into the cart, it's scanning it as you go. And, at Mercatus, we have experience designing that type of technology. Our first incarnation was Springboard Retail Networks, where we designed that type of technology. It was tested at Loblaws. It was tested at Bloom. So, we've seen the difficulty of building something like that and trying to bring it to realization. And the reality is it's a tough business model, but I appreciate the way Amazon's doing it. I think it has, to a certain extent, some merit.
Yeah, and again, it's 100% focused on removing the friction from the checkout process. I mean, you go into a grocery store, what is the one thing that still remains a bottleneck in getting in and out of the store? It's the checkout.
Well, I dread it. I dread it for two reasons. I avoid grocery retailers where I have to self-bag my groceries. I avoid that. I avoid it because I'm not good at it. I'm not speedy. I feel guilty that I'm holding up the line for the people behind me. And trust me, I've had my share of shoppers look at me really strange.
The dirty looks.
The dirty looks in grocery retail in the aisles from fellow shoppers is
I'm sorry, I didn't work my way through high school bagging grocery bags.
Right. I didn't.
Did you?
I didn't. So I'm sorry I'm not an expert at it. I'm sorry I'm hogging all the room by the bread aisle. It's not my fault. Sorry.
God forbid you crush something when you get home.
Right. Well, God forbid I buy the wrong bread.
That's true.
God, I feel bad for the bread makers of America now hearing our story. But the reality, so I avoid that first and foremost. Two, it's just the lineups, and I try not to use self-checkout. Not that I don't like it, but if you have more than 5 to 10 items, it's not as convenient. But I don't know all the PLUs and so on.
Yeah, and again, I mean, they're doing a good job now of trying to keep the terminals clean. I mean, the store that I go, they've actually hired a person. That's all they do is they wipe every time someone uses the checkout. They go and wipe it down. It gives you pause for concern.
Yeah, I kind of went dark here. I think one of my lights went out. Well, I'm just gonna stay like this now. We're on a roll. Yes,
you're mysterious. You're mysterious, Mr. Perrier.
Yes, you get to see me, my natural state of darkness.
See, this is one of the things. One of the things that we have to cope with. But
that's right.
We're going on. Keep calm. Carry on.
Yes, and did you know that Sobeys has reintroduced brown paper bags?
No, I didn't. Sobeys is one of the large Canadian grocery retail chains. Yeah,
owned by the Empire Group out of Stellarton, Nova Scotia. And there was the retailer that actually bought Safeway out in Western Canada. And I appreciate the fact that, is it environmentally safe and friendly? Yeah, there's a lot of debates on that. But I think the reality is our neighborhood is funny. They're reusing those bags to cover school books like we used to do. We used to do as kids, the parents.
That was good. You used to color them and
so
to do.
And I'm seeing kids doing arts and crafts with them. So I think I applaud them for that, and just kind of somewhat eliminating plastic and so on. And I think that's great.
But it's just another example of how this pandemic has just turned the cart upside down, when it comes to what we were doing and what we're doing now. Yeah.
And so the other news is TikTok. I mean, I think it's been a contentious relationship with the White House in terms of, the rhetoric around data privacy, that the app isn't secure. And it really just picked up steam and I think if you remember this, Mark, when Amazon issued a notice to its employees to say, hey, by the way, we think this app is an issue. There's some security risk. We prefer if you are running a company phone or a phone that has access to sensitive Amazon data that you don't have the application installed.
Right.
So you've seen a lot of companies forward in trying to acquire the US side of TikTok. So we've seen Microsoft, we've seen Oracle come to the table in terms of Oracle managing infrastructure and so on. But I think the one name that stood out the most, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, is Walmart actually trying to cut a deal.
Yeah, it's at first glance you think, what the heck is Walmart want to do with a social media platform, especially a platform whose demographic skews so young. But when you start to think about it, it sort of makes sense. And from Walmart's perspective, they're driving hard. They're driving hard to, reach an audience that normally would not purchase from them, but maybe eventually one day will, or at least their parents will purchase from them.
Right. Yeah, it's also kind of interesting because this is all happening at the same time that Walmart announced Walmart Plus.
Yep.
And it's $98, I believe. It's less expensive than an Amazon Prime membership. And there's some significant advantages within the Walmart Plus package. So we're talking about discount on fuel, for example, which I think is something like 5 cents a gallon. And Walmart's partnered with a series of fuel stations across the United States. And I did a quick calculation. So if you take an average car, spending $36 to $40 a week on gas, and you calculate the 5 cent discount, it ends up being a saving of $42. And that's half of the membership.
Yeah.
Close to half, right?
Yeah, it's, I've heard other comment, what took Walmart so long? Is it's not something completely out of the experience that other retailers have, regional retailers do. But when you scale it across, the size of business that Walmart has, it is a value add for those shoppers.
Yeah, and I think that this idea of them controlling TikTok will give them access to data, and it's been reported that a strong percentage of the TikTok users actually have an Amazon Prime account.
Yeah.
And so it would give Walmart a big plus in what they could do with the data and being able to market to a consumer base that I don't think normally shops at Walmart.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. This is something that I think Scott Galloway's brought up on his show. He talks about algorithmic commerce and how that's now, the leading strategic driver for a lot of these investment decisions. I mean, the reality is we've been doing algorithmic commerce for years,
right?
Just on our platform. What are your thoughts on how he's framed that?
Yeah, it's interesting that Scott comes out with the context of e-commerce at the same time as the movie The Social Dilemma was released on Netflix. And that there's a really impactful line that's shared in that movie, which is we're now large corporations, the Facebooks, the Googles of the world, and I think pretty much any social platform, we're trading now on human futures.
Predicting behavior.
Predicting it and then changing
influencing
it. Right? So really influencing it. And I think the context, like even at Mercatus, when we decided to launch personalization, I think the rationale behind it was a very simple rationale, quite frankly. When you look at transactional data for any given household, you could easily do a series of things. One is reverse compile the makeup of that household. So, for example, a basic example of that is if they are buying adult diapers, if they are buying certain elements that are more conducive to a senior citizen, then you can reasonably deduce that it's an older household. You can also look at the amount of money they're spending. It could be a fixed income household, as well as the number of individuals in the house, right? So I don't think most, if, for example, if they're buying Old Spice deodorant, so in other things, okay, there's a man in the house, and if they're buying feminine hygiene products, then you can deduce there's a woman in the household. So this becomes really interesting. But what you can also tell is if you know the makeup of the household, what is it that they're not buying with you? As a retailer, where are they going? That's that famous delta that we always talk about. Are they going to an adjacent retailer in another vertical, for example, an RX play? Canada would be Shoppers Drug Mart, the United States would be CVS. Are they going there to buy their health and beauty products? Why are they not buying them with us? And the concept's always been, can we at the very least use a piece of content on the mobile app or the website to influence their behavior? And we've seen that be very successful with a lot of retailers. But this notion on trading on futures is one step ahead of, I think, what our concepts were at the time. And what I'm right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when we approach it, we do it from the perspective of, speed and convenience for the shopper.
Right.
And offer that capability to the retailer. So you're building your basket. Last thing you want to do, you have a 70-item basket. Likelihood of you remembering everything that you need is pretty low. So if you have this prompt saying, "Hey, last time you bought cantaloupe, do you want another cantaloupe?" That's the convenience factor. But when you start getting into influencing other behavior, that's where I think consumers will start to have some concern. We're not there yet, at least as far as e-commerce platforms go, but it's coming.
Yeah,
and I think Walmart's decision gives you an indication as to what their thoughts are.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when you hear the words trading on human futures, it's also the rapid commoditization of humanity.
Wow.
And what that means is you're leaving a series of very powerful companies manage that, and to the benefit of whom? Is it for sure to their benefit? I mean, their stocks are well reflect that, but also is it also to the benefits of the advertising agencies who represent large CPGs?
Right.
And I don't think even talking to a lot of CPGs lately, because we launched our ad network, that even they're reaping the rewards. I think there's this really abstracted middle here of this data, these models that are being built, and they're to the benefit of whom in the long run. And I think that's what we need to be mindful of. Now, luckily, in the world, like you said, in the world of e-commerce and specifically in grocery, we're just not there,
right,
at all. Which I think you're right. Walmart is going to be the first step into this. It'll be interesting. I've always wondered, there's a couple things. I mean, luckily in California, there's good legislation in CCPA. I think this at some point will become a federal law, and it will start to change the landscape. But unfortunately, right now there are more important things to deal with in the U.S. The latest piece of news: HEB has formally announced their partnership with the folks over at Swisslog. Mm-hmm. Which is great. It's going to be for HEB their first venture into implementing MFC technology. Swisslog is a company that actually reps and installs AutoStore's technology.
Yep.
And when was it, Mark, we interviewed the VP of sales from AutoStore?
Actually, it was earlier in 2020, this year. It was shortly after we came back from San Diego.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because, most people might not know this, and I encourage you to go back to listen to that episode. The reality is the way AutoStore kind of came about, it was an integrated circuit manufacturer. It's a company. Mm-hmm. And out of Norway that basically said, there's got to be a better way for us to manage our own warehouse in terms of picking and packing and so on.
Yep.
And they invented their own technology to do this, and they did it really well, and it was extremely efficient. So much so that a friendly company just down the road, a stone's throw away, as I've been told, the CEO came over and said, I really like that technology, and I'm wondering if you'd be willing to implement it into our location. Now, I think that's great. I've been getting a lot of phone calls from some retailers, some of them that are not Mercatus customers, saying, hey, I think we're considering doing an implementation of an MFC solution. And then we start talking about cost of implementing, what's the break-even point. But I think more so is the educational piece here for retailers and for those that are listening that work in retail. I think you have to take the approach that, what is the volume? Is it consistent? Is it geographically dispersed? Yep. And if it is there an opportunity to amalgamate into an MFC location? But also be mindful, what are going to be not just your last mile costs, because if you're doing delivery, what are going to be the costs of getting those orders into the hands of the stores that may be acting as fulfillment points? So think of the whole hub and spoke model in this context. So I think you got to go in, right, with eyes wide open.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, understanding where your shoppers are purchasing now, the volume, the consistency of that volume. The pandemic has skewed much of everything. In our own, we'll talk about it shortly, our own research is showing that there are changed behaviors, and those behaviors will continue going forward. I definitely think it's something that a lot of retailers will be looking at very, very closely.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be really critical at this point for how retailers are going to approach the market with the surge that they've seen from the pandemic. And, I don't know if most people know this, we're now starting in Canada to deal with a shortage of toilet paper, paper towel, and cleaning products.
I got the last package of Bounty on Friday.
You did. Well, I had to.
So,
We bought. I went to two different locations. I got 2 packs, and I'm divvying them up with my neighbors. I've become a paper towel pusher at this point.
It's different. It's paper towel. It's not toilet paper as much as paper towel.
Right. And it's not glamorous to be one of those types of pushers. But I think this is a sign of the times. And again, if you're a retailer, yes, it's great you're thinking about MFC. We wish the team over at HEB the best of luck, but I encourage you to think about how are you going to fulfill for the consumers. I mean, we've seen this in our research. It's not all about delivery. Pickup in many locations has a higher demand.
Yeah, and it's consistent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now let's go into the research, and I want to kind of give some context to everyone about this. We, for the last, I believe, 3 years, 3 or 4 years, I think this is something we started in 2017, even before Mark joined Mercatus.
Yeah.
My background is in research and research technology for a better part of my career. And I was always fascinated that when we were talking to retailers, there was really no data available that would explain what are consumers thinking about, what are their sentiment on price sensitivity for certain services, what do they prefer, delivery, pickup, and so on. Why do they shop at their preferred retailer? What would cause them to change? So without secured permission from a lot of our customers at the time, and even non-customers, to say, let us draft a research piece, a survey, we'll let you administer it, meaning you can email out to your customers, it'll be branded to you, and we'll collect the data, we'll prepare a benchmark report, and we'll share your individual report data results with you. And for us, that became very valuable for our product teams, valuable for marketing, and even more so valuable in having real strategic conversations with retailers.
Yeah, and that's probably the real reason that we continue to do this. It's a lot of work, but it's to have that dialogue with our retailers who, look, I mean, they're extremely busy, even busier now, more so than ever, to give them that guidance that they need to help run their businesses.
Absolutely. Now, historically, for the 3-4 times that we've done this, we never shared this data outside of our 4 walls and the results.
Right.
And there for valid reasons. I think at the time we were kind of debating, when is the right time for Mercatus to step into the realm of being an authority in the space, meaning leveraging our research and our knowledge and presenting that back out to the industry in the most unbiased way possible. So this year we decided to do that, and it's been nothing but amazing in the pickup of the numbers. It's a prediction, right? It's a model that what we did different this year. Actually, the last 2 years, we actually went out and recruited a research firm out of Chicago called Incisive. A lot of smart data scientists and researchers, and they took our survey, changed it around a bit, still maintaining ability to compare against the previous year.
Yep.
And we went out to market and we kind of launched it. And like I said, the results and the pickup have been amazing. And I'm just going to switch here to the ability to see this first page here. Give me 1 second. And
so this is, just to pick up on that. So the survey itself, really with the benefit and the help of our retail partners. So we distributed it this summer, June to be exact. Incisive helped collect the responses. And to your point, the reason we wanted to have a third party, an accredited research firm, help is in the previous years, the data may have appeared to be self-serving, and we knew that this year more so than ever, the appearance of being unbiased, but authoritative when it comes to the insights that we're producing, was important. So we went to market, collected about 60,000 responses across 20 states in the U.S. And it collected about 48 million data points.
It's been amazing.
Yeah, and as a result of that, we've come up with some pretty powerful insights that we can go through.
So, Mark, let's talk about who's responding to this survey.
You're talking about in the media?
Well, more so the demographic profile.
Right. So we went across all of our clients. These are the participating clients' shopper base. Most of it, as you can see here, gender-wise, about 71% female, 24% male. So very, very. It's a traditional perspective as to who's doing majority of the household buying.
Right.
Age-wise, the majority in the 45 to 64 category. Another 31% over 65, and the millennial audience comprised the remaining 20%.
Yeah, which is a good split.
Yeah.
So let's get into the summary results.
Sure.
So let me just jump in here. I think what we've noticed coming out of this is that the reality of why people are, let's say, loyal to their existing retailer, it's fundamentally because of a few things. One is proximity, two is value, and ultimately it's product selection.
That's right.
And
that's right.
In the pandemic, we saw some significant changes to that. And probably the most significant one is you saw roughly 60% of consumers just naturally transition out of their preferred retailer simply because of concerns. Right. And Mark, do you remember what some of those concerns were?
Yeah, first and foremost, product availability, COVID, concerns about COVID, ranked second. And what was the third one? Do you have that?
I think a lot of it was just the fact of time so there was the concerns of COVID and then product availability, but also there was the operational challenges of time slots that were kind of missing.
Correct. Yep. Time slots.
So people were just, let me see if I can buy basics here. And then eventually if they can't find it, they would just go to the retailer and so on and so on and so on and just shift.
Yeah. And I think that insight that they still preferred a brick and mortar experience over a pure play e-commerce provider is one of the other interesting insights that were uncovered from the responses.
Now, the one thing that we've noticed coming out of this research is that, and I think this is where this prediction that we made has kind of caught the industry a little bit off guard here, is shopping online in this vertical has fundamentally changed.
100%.
Right? I think the most earliest predictions were at one point years ago, it was 100 billion by 2025. That was revised by the awesome team at FMI to being north of 140 billion by 2025.
Right.
And now we chose, so first of all, we chose to do our survey not at the height of the pandemic. This wasn't in April. It was mostly post-May, Mark, I think, May, June.
Yep. June mostly. 3 weeks in June.
3 weeks in June. So yep. we made that conscious decision. And so what we kind of realized is that from collecting data from 60,000 shoppers is that the reality is a very small subset of people will go back to shopping in store. And they are typically, and again, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong here, they are typically over the age of 60, 65 plus.
Yeah, we saw a huge influx of seniors, and you experienced this yourself, purchasing online for the first time. And that demographic is reporting a very high sticky factor when it comes to continuing. And I think overall, the numbers worked out to about 7% of online shoppers would revert to in-store, leaving approximately 36% of new online shoppers continuing to purchase online, which is huge when it comes to the adoption factor of e-commerce and grocery generally.
Yeah, and this is where it gets extremely interesting in the model that we've adopted here. And the reality is going to be what we think, and I'm going to put this graphic up here so I can really bring it home for everyone, is we know that in 2019, grocery e-commerce in the total vertical, right? So the vertical would have been just north of $1 billion, represented roughly 3.4%. And we were heading toward in 2020 roughly 4.3% of, again, still north of a $1 trillion market. But that has jumped up to 10.2%. And if you look at the CAGR, compounded annual growth rate, we're estimating that in the vertical alone, by 2025, and the vertical itself will probably hit 1.1, maybe 1.2 trillion, that grocery will be online 21.5% of that.
Yeah.
Which is it's a big number. It's 250 billion. It's 107, 110 billion more than the most recent prediction. I think that was done end of 2019, or maybe even it's a pre-COVID number.
Yeah, FMI's and Nielsen's number was, I think, early February 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I will say a few things. We're fortunate in Mercatus because not only do we have great retailers that allow us to survey their customers, we also provide back infrastructure for them to report on, right? So we've integrated Tableau and so on, and any of the transactional data that flows through us, they have access to report on it. We've seen some retailers in the nation go from go into a 4 to 5x in revenue, and yes, in certain markets we're seeing a decline, weekly decline, 5%, 7%, 8%, and I think that's also been reported by David Bishop and his team at Brick Meets Click. That is where we saw a decline. We saw, I think it was the month of June, we hit 7.2 billion just for that month in sales.
Yep.
And in August, we went down to 5.4 billion.
Yeah. There's what David is calling the new normal in grocery retail. There's definitely been a shift from food back to outside of the home as a result. But there's also, I think the key point here is that August number is still about 200 million more than the April number, which is really at the height of the pandemic.
Okay, that's a great point. I'm glad you share that. But also to add to that, we're also seeing certain markets where the sales are not really declining.
No.
And we've talked about maybe the next interesting piece of research would be, could we overlay this on this data against a map that says, well, political figures in this geographical area have made these decisions. These are the number of cases we're seeing for COVID, and so on. And would that help make better decisions for a retailer? No, not really. I mean, because then you'd wonder, well, what's the next prediction, the next decision that's going to be made that may be affecting this? And I don't think we know. But what I think is true here, when I talk to consumers who don't know what I do for a living, don't know that I work for Mercatus, they're new to e-commerce, the reality is after their fourth experience, it's extremely sticky. And the main driver is, guess what? Convenience.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that we've seen in our research. COVID has changed behavior. This is not something that any of the experts in the industry expect to have a full scale retrenchment. We feel blessed to have provided and continue to provide an essential service, and it's something from our perspective, we feel quite proud, and we're working hard to make sure that our systems continue to support consumers that view it in those terms.
Yeah, and this is exciting, and I think Mark and I have been talking about this. I had the pleasure of having a chat with a CEO of a pet food supplier, one of the largest in the country, headquartered out of North Carolina. And I was kind of getting what's his impression vis-a-vis what he's seeing. Mm-hmm. And they saw a massive explosion on their side as well, and the demand for high-end pet food, which taking care of the family pet. I'm hoping we can bring him on for a guest.
Yeah, that would be great.
So who knows where these numbers are going to end up? I mean, this is the beauty about doing research. You're making a prediction based on what you have in front of you and what you're seeing from consumer temperament. So I'm excited to see what that's going to end up. Mark, as always, it's always fun to record an episode with you, certainly on a Sunday. I feel like this is taking a form of like an NPR show.
It's laid back Sunday afternoon.
It's laid back. Is Diane Rehm still alive from NPR? God, she was so old when I used to listen.
I don't think so.
We should get Diane Rehm on a show if she's still alive. She's great. I love Diane Rehm. So, hey, Mark, can you share with our guests how they can get a hold of us?
Sure. I think the best place to go is digitalgrocer.com. You can reach us at our website. You can reach us on YouTube. And when you're there, please hit the like and subscribe. That'll give us some good feedback, and we can continue giving you more content that you love to hear.
Yeah,
provide your comments.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have any questions, just don't hesitate to reach out to us through our social channels. Yep. Even you can go on LinkedIn. We're equally there as well. Be more than happy to kind of tackle a subject on a future show. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. Peace.